Describe for this audience the problem in Mexico.
Well, it's just when the president decide to resolve the situation of drugs violence, taking out of their barrack to the militaries and brought to the street, to the public security, that we start watching a very high number of violations of human rights, and the violence increased so much. So at the beginning we have just a problem, I say, on drugs, but after we start having a very serious problems, extortion problems, and especially one that is very, very difficult, hard to manage, is people who have been disappeared. Now in Mexico, we have the government has accepted they have a list of 26,000 people who is disappeared, and this number is just a little number, but the reality is very, very big.
Well, about, I would say a little more than a year ago, we had on this show Jorge Castañeda, the former foreign minister of Mexico under Vicente Fox, and we asked him about the drug war. He said at the time that it wasn't really as big a problem as people were making it out, that it was largely a regional problem near the border, that the rest of Mexico was continuing to function well. I'm wondering your sense, because you're based in Monterrey, aren't you? And yes, to what degree the violence and the kidnappings and the disappearings have spread throughout the rest of the country?
Well, what we watch since our small organization is that it's a local problem in the north of the Mexico, but also there is in all the country. No, sometimes it doesn't show. For instance, we have been working with people who are disappearing since 2009, 2008, and it was just with the human rights report that they bring out with the president that they start thinking that there was a problem. But people suffering in social, psychological, and economic things are there, and they show the truth.
Nick Steinberg, after Human Rights Watch issued its report documenting 249 disappearances during President Calderón's administration, the government acknowledged for the first time it kept a database of more than 27,000 people reported missing or disappeared. Talk about this.
Well, you know, during the previous administration under President Calderón, with disappearances and with other human rights abuses, the line was that there were no human rights abuses, that the military and the police didn't commit abuses, that they were committed by cartels, and that the victims were members of cartels. The admission by the new government, by the Peña Nieto government, which took over at the end of last year, that more than 27,000 people were missing or disappeared, is a very important one because it acknowledges the scale of the problem. What it doesn't do, and what this administration hasn't done, is said what they're actually going to do to investigate these cases. And that's a very important question.
Well, in October, Attorney General Jesus Murillo Caram said most of those reported as disappeared have been found, that the number of those who remained unaccounted for is, quote, much less than the figures that are being cited.
Yeah, you know, I think this has been a line from the Peña Nieto administration since it released this list, has been now to downplay the problem and say, look, we're going to find most of these people. Most of these people are people who left with a significant other or tried to migrate to the U.S., but they've never provided any empirical evidence of this claim. And in fact, what we know from working with the families of the disappeared is that all of the cases that we've documented, the authorities have done nothing to take the basic steps to bring to justice security forces or members of organized crime who have committed these abuses. So we don't see the evidence. We hear a lot of talk about this, but we haven't seen anything to actually prove this.
And Consuelo Morales, I'd like to ask you about this, the victimizing of migrants who are either passing through Mexico. Some of the cables are just astounding that were released recently from the U.S. consulate. For instance, here in Matamoros, it reported in August 22nd of 2010 that 75 migrants were stopped by an unknown number of organized crime figures and transported under guard to San Fernando. an Ecuadorian male who survived the massacre, described how before the killings, some of the victims were offered an opportunity to work for the Zetas, one of the drug gangs, as assassins. After all but one of the group turned down the offer to work for the Zetas, the survivors stated that 54 men and 15 women were subsequently executed. This enormous toll that's occurring of the people just migrating through Mexico to get to the United States. You talk about what you found.
Well, this shows that the talk about numbers must let us know the situation. No, the situation that so many people that here or are on the list is because the families demand for justice. But most of the people, they do not go to the authorities to ask for demand for justice. With the people who is coming through our country, it is very dangerous. Why? Because the organized crime is taking the power and making whatever they want. No, sometimes or many times with the support or the participation with authorities. We cannot explain this without the participation of authorities.
And you've had a number of those authorities arrested. A few years ago, the LA Times wrote, remarkably, Sister Consuelo's efforts have led to the arrest of 15 people, including police and government officials, in just 4 months. How do you do it? How do you get government officials arrested?
We say that there is a disappearance when the authority detain somebody from a legal or illegal form, but after that they deny or they say we don't know what happened with him or it wasn't true. So what we do in CADAC is that we take and we documented the cases, so we know that at least the 30% of the cases, the number of people that we have disappeared, have been done by also with the help of the support of authorities.
And Nick, I'd like to ask you about this whole question of the U.S. Government policy, whether it's the DEA or other or agencies that work with the Mexican government in the drug war. We have 100,000 people now supposedly dead in this drug violence. What's the United States government not doing that it could be doing?
So the U.S. has given more than $2 billion in aid to Mexico for its war on drugs since 2007. This actually started in the Bush administration. It's continued uninterrupted under Obama. What the U.S. did when it created this program called the Merida Initiative is they put in human rights conditions, and they said that 15% of these funds would be withheld every year pending approval that Mexico had met these conditions. Now, the unfortunate thing that's happened is the U.S. wrote beautiful human rights conditions. They go right towards some of the biggest problems in Mexico, like the fact that soldiers that commit abuses are prosecuted in the military justice system. What has gone wrong is that every year the State Department produces a report that if you read it without reading the cover page, you would say, absolutely, the U.S. is not meeting these Mexico is not meeting these conditions. And every year, the State Department and Congress rubber stamp these funds and they release the money to Mexico. Now, the problem is that sends the message to Mexico that, we may put these conditions in there, but to us, they're not important enough to actually withhold any money. So the U.S. has been a partner of Mexico in this. The U.S., as the cables reveal, knows that serious abuses have been committed, and the U.S., for the most part, has been entirely silent on this problem in Mexico.
What would it take?
It would take leadership at the highest levels. Obama has gone to Mexico repeatedly under the Calderon administration. He went to meet with President Peña Nieto. His only statement on human rights has been standing next to President Calderon to say the real human rights abusers in Mexico are the cartels. He's never once publicly on the record said that Mexican security forces, be they soldiers or police, have committed abuses or that there's a serious impunity problem. Now, that is from the top down, and when you don't have the president saying it, no one else can.
Sister Consuelo, what gives you hope?
We have hope. And we have hope because when we receive people, mothers, fathers, brothers, that are looking for their loved ones, even they are afraid, even they are threatened, they still looking for justice and for the truth. And we think meanwhile, there is hope. We have to work for it.